YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. Welcome to my review for Kikai Sentai Zenkaiger episode 29. So, much like last week's with the manga episode, this was kind of your par for the course Zenkaiger episode. And I just realized that I say par for the course a lot. I don't know why golf's so involved in this. That is a golf term, right? I'm not a sports. Anyway, because it's one of those episodes that's kind of like a silly filler premise that has some funny stuff in it, but there's also a little bit of story beats for the main story overall. And it wasn't 100% my cup of tea, but it wasn't an awful episode. Like, the main premise around the filler plot was this tennis monster, and it was also going hand in hand with Stacy attacking again, because Stacy attacks Kaito right at the beginning, which is really funny because when Stacy shows up, he's like, it's time to fight, and Kaito's like, oh, can we take a rain check? And he's like, no. And he started just shooting at him when he was on the bike, which I found really to be really funny and satisfying for some reason. And also kind of funny just because, A, it kind of reminded me of something Zox would do, like in episodes where they're like, you can't hurt the civilians, and he's like, why? He's like, because they're brain control. And he's like, oh, psh, and then he just punches a civilian. But also because I feel like that's happened at least 2 or 3 times where Stacy's wanted to fight and Kaito's been able to put it off to fight at some other location, and this time it just didn't work. So when he's fighting him, he calls in the other Rangers, and everyone gets the call, including Majin, who's with the grandmother. But then when she's on her way out, she hears some ruckus. What am I, 50 years old? Ruckus? Anyway, she hears some noises, and it turns out it's this tennis monster attacking everyone, and this tennis monster turns everyone into tennis balls. You know how it is! And it turns the grandmother into a tennis ball, and then she shows up on the fight scene with Stacy and shows what happened, and it stops the fight scene because not only are the Rangers distracted, but Stacy is distracted as well. And Stacy's upset with the other guys for having this villain plot that gets in the way. He says because it's getting in the way, but also he's obviously upset that the grandmother is mixed up in all this stuff. And then basically, Zox is like, oh, I read this tennis manga, so now we're going to do a tennis training montage. So they do some tennis training, and again, there's like a montage, and it just wasn't my thing. Like, there was some funny beats, but it just wasn't my thing. I found it to be more annoying or whatever than funny for me compared to the manga stuff, which I thought was pretty clever. Like, you know, it's kind of hit or miss. It's very subjective. It depends on what you like about this, but I didn't find it to be all that entertaining for me personally. But you kind of have those montages going on, and then they have this final tennis match with the Monster of the Week. And even though they morph and stuff, and they end up losing, and then Stacy shows up, calling himself Satoshi, you know, which is the name the grandmother knows him by, and ends up winning the match for them and allows them to defeat him. And they use Zenkaijo first, but then they go to Majin and they do like kind of, you know, their classic unique Zenkaiger fight where they have like a tennis match and they defeat him. And then at the end, there's 2 things that happen at the end. One is, you know, after all this, Kaito's very grateful for Stacy for helping out, and he tells the grandmother that Satoshi just might be stopping by the shop because his hope has increased that Stacy's not far gone. And then when Stacy shows back up at the base, this robot monster thing attacks him, this new prototype robot monster that the professor has created. So, like I said, I didn't hate this episode, but I didn't love it. Like, I think the tennis stuff just wasn't my cup of tea. And I do appreciate, though, that it wasn't just a filler episode, and they actually had some stuff in there for the main plot. That being said, I feel like we're just running in circles with this Stacy thing. Like, even though I enjoyed parts of it, it just feels like the same exact beats of Stacy being like, I care about the grandmother. No, I'm really evil. I care about the grandmother. Rinse and repeat. And that's what this felt like, especially after, you know, that whole push of him being more determined and feeling like more of a threat. Even though it wasn't, like, you know, not enjoyable, it just feels like we're repeating the same beats over and over again. And I just have very mixed thoughts on the Stacy plot and how they handled it overall. Like I said, I kind of wish we didn't have to redeem him, but I'm always a sucker for a redemption story. But again, I just feel like we're running in circles with that, and that can be a little bit annoying. So even though this episode wasn't awful, just the tennis thing wasn't my thing. And also, again, I just feel like we're repeating the same story beats with Stacy over and over again, and this just... It's the same thing when he attacks. It's like you always end off on a cliffhanger of like, oh, Stacy's attacking, and then he ends up losing. And I feel like Stacy is just a series of time loops. That's his whole story. But again, just objectively, I did appreciate that it wasn't just a filler episode. And I did like the little kind of cliffhanger at the end about this new villain. I thought that was kind of nice too. Just a nice lead-in, and then a nice moment there at the end where Kaito like hasn't given up hope on him. So it wasn't an awful episode. It just wasn't my thing. I would give it a 2 out of 5, just only because... I mean, again, the tennis thing is more of like a personal thing, but only because I'm just tired of us running in circles with the plot. But I appreciated stuff like the cliffhanger at the end, and there was some enjoyable bits. But what did you guys think of the tennis episode? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.